Hey, everybody. Um, Once again, it is my pleasure and thrill and absolute pleasure to be coming to you again doing these kinds of episodes, talking to some fascinating, interesting, and very smart and passionate folk, loving to do it. And real hoot, most of the folk I'm talking to are my friends. People that I enjoy talking to anyway. And once again, or as my grandmother would have said it, and the old people that I grew up around, once more and again, um, we have somebody that's been on our um, show before and that has joined us in conversation, but now we gonna talk about what it is that they've been up to for about the last 18 months, 2 years, and such, and really intently for the last year or more. I think the secret is out. We're going to talk about um, some of the ideas and thoughts she has about community transformation and building. Listen, my friend is a artiste, a ordained clergy minister, a social innovator. I like that. I like that term, by the way. Social innovator, a leader, a community leader, and probably in the formal way, she's a person of faith um, and destined to become clearly known not just in our area, in our region, and across this country as she already is, but known, far beyond the circles of, it's folk that know you, but then there are folk that don't know you, but need to know you. Well, she's on that trajectory to the folk that need to know who she is. She's from right here in Connecticut and has spent the better part of the last 20 plus years in ministry in and around the city of Hartford and in its region, and has been an innovator and a leader. Let me bring to this platform once again our sister and our friend, the Reverend Dr. Shelley D. Best. Come and greet the people, sis.
Yay! It's
If
good
I
to
had
be
applause, if I had applause and effects, that's you would get it right there. You get a standing O right there.
all right. It's good to be here. Boy, you
All
really
right.
brought me on.
What you're deserving of it. Listen, I'll tell our folk here. When we arrived here 25 years ago, my beloved and I and our children, um, I not long arrived, and I heard tell of some of your goings on. You at that time, um, I don't quite remember. You hadn't gotten to the Council of Churches yet, so that hadn't quite happened yet. But I tell you what you were doing. You were taught. We were at that time, if you remember, the Casey Foundation.
That was some good money. We have to sit in a room for $500 for a weekend. Did you ever do one of those Casey projects? It's like
I
I'm
did.
in a room for $500, and they fly you someplace else. You got to sit here for the weekend for $1,000. And this was 20 years ago. That was some good money and good food.
That's right. I
A
did.
good cause theoretically.
Yes, right. We were, in fact, I was a part of the team that I led a team with the Casey Foundation's money to Scoop at the time, which is the Seminary Consortium for Urban Pastoral Education, and we did an intensive week long there, and I was the lead person. And there were some people that came along, and we went out to Chicago. I was a adjunct faculty for that. For Scoop for a number of years. So it was fun to do that. But yeah, I think that's where we met. I think that's when I got to know you.
Yeah.
Who you were.
There weren't many of us in the room.
No, it was not. And then you took on leadership at the then the Council of the
The
Conference of
Capital
Churches,
Region Conference of Churches.
the Capital Region Conference of Churches.
And then I radically changed the name to the Conference of Churches.
That's right. That's right. And then now it is
The
this
two
award winning
space.
the 224 Echo Space and System and such and whatever. And welcome again. You've been with us before, and of course, you're our colleague and friend. And I wanted to talk about um, what you are now up to. You've been scheming for a minute, some might say. I'll say the Lord's been using you.
Lord, Lord, Lord. Now that is truly what it is. And, and I thank you for that kind of framing, because I thought I had an assignment from the Lord, another assignment. And let me just give by way of context. I've been in ministry for 35 years, since I was 26 years old. And so do a little math. I'm doing all right for a person that started in ministry at 26. I don't look like what I've been through. And so for me, when I think about the journey of starting out in ministry, I did sort of start with a twist, if you will, because I was 26 and most of the other ministers were like 60 already. So my ministry was sold out for the least of these concepts, like to be committed to the least of these, the poor, those who don't have. And of course, one of my favorite professors at Harvard Seminary that really embedded a lot in my heart was Thomas Hoyt, who really talked about rich and poor and flipping it over and loving the book of Luke and looking at the word in a whole new way. And so I was formed in ministry with some radical thinkers. And then it's just my nature that I've been an artist. So I was raised in an arts kind of family. My mother was a pianist and an organist. Believe it or not, she was selling Hammond organs back in 1962. Hammond organs out of Norfolk, Connecticut, a Black woman, and giving private piano lessons. And then my father was an activist. So for me, it sort of came naturally that I was formed this way. Now, one thing that's interesting in the course of the last year or so, couple of years, as I've been doing some real soul searching, I found out that, you know how sometimes you can live someplace and you don't always know why your family lives someplace? And so I went to an event at First Congregational Church in Norfolk, and that's where I found out that James Mars was my great 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 grandfather. And that's why my family lived in Norfolk, because that's where I'm from. So I am a descendant of the last enslaved Black man in Connecticut who wrote his own narrative. And he
It's
sold
funny
his
you
books.
mention. It's funny you would mention him. For those of you who don't know, not only one, her great 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 ancestor is on the wall of fame in the Capitol. There is a hallway that connects the legislative office building to the actual Capitol building, and her ancestor is huge picture, big huge picture on the wall there.
And I didn't know. I used to walk by him and wonder about him. Didn't even know he was my blood.
Right, and he is an also a founding member of the Colored Congregational Society that then became the Colored Congregational Church, that ultimately became Talcott Street Congregational Church, today's Faith Congregational Church. He is a founding member of that congregation.
Well, when
And
I
it was
discovered about
yeah,
James Mars, I realized I'm actually a part of Connecticut Black royalty. He's a part of the Freedom Trail. So if you want to know freedom fighters in Connecticut, Black people, I'm Black royalty in activism. It's like, to know it now, it makes a whole lot of sense, especially for my experience of creative disruption. So the assignment. Um, let's see. don't want to tell too much of a story, but I became the CEO of the Greater Hartford Arts Council after serving for 8 years as pastor of Redeemer's Church in Plainville. And it's all right for us to be bivocational because in the Black church, you cannot afford to just work for the Black church because they cannot afford you. And so that's why most of us have other jobs. And so I got this position at the Arts Council. And I have to admit, after 22 years of being at the Conference of Churches and in the struggle in that certain kind of way, I thought, maybe I can kind of chill, not chill like I'm not going to work, but like, because it's one thing to work without resources, but it's another thing to work with resources. And so I knew I had an opportunity to work with resources and make a difference. Well, long story short, what I didn't realize was the reputation of the organization, of them being kind of closed and elitist and not welcoming to brown people. Well, it was still part of the legacy of the organization, and they didn't realize it. How some things can be deep rooted, and it's not like the same people are there, but that root is there. And when I first walked into that place, when I first got the job, everybody, of course, celebrated you. One of the people, yeah, go ahead, my sister, because I got friends. Yeah, I've been in the hood with everybody else. I've been here in Hartford in the struggle. We all been struggling, carrying buckets of water. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Because as a matter of fact, like my post on Facebook was like hit with like 500 people saying, yay, congratulations. It was the largest post that the Arts Council ever had. So then I got in there and it was a great program, Hartford Creates. And through the position, because of the federal funds, we got to contract with local artists because it was federal money to put people back to work. It was after the pandemic. So for the first time, the Arts Council had to fund individual artists because you had to put people back to work. Well, during that flow, everybody and their mama was getting a check finally to work in the arts. And we worked on them getting compensated equally because there was a lot of scams running in Hartford. Certain pimps working Black and brown young folk, promising them things and then not paying them full contracts over and over again. Young folk getting hurt, churned out. That's been going on for years here with the brown young folk. And so when I got there, I got to clean up some of that stuff and put real folks to work. And we created some great art. Well, the murals, the public art murals that you see around Hartford are because of the Hartford Creates project. And I didn't let them just be done. I'm a minister. I curated them. So what do you mean I curated them? I felt that if I had the yes and no power, I'm going to make sure those murals have power in the city. And I'm going to make sure they're ministry, even though it appears to be just a picture. So the first big project we completed was that little boy with the fireflies in the jar. And if you don't feel a spark of something when you drive down the highway, see, it's inspiration, just a moment, spark. That was the first project. What's powerful is when you're coming into Hartford from that angle and you're coming underneath the bridge, you see Anthony Griffin's face above the bridge. His head is right there. Some people don't know who he is, and he's got a halo over his head. Anthony Griffin was a spiritual, soulful being who had a past, a present, and a supernatural future. Powerful impact on young people, entrepreneur. He just was a blessing to so many people. And so that image, how dare she allow something like that? But what's deep is that section of town was just an ugly block, wasn't it? But then when Anthony Griffin's face got there, suddenly people felt some kind of way because his face was there. Before it was just a spray painted block. Now it's a sacred image in the city, a Black man with a halo over his head in Hartford. Ha! And because I had yes power, another image that I curated is that young sister sitting over there on the Trumbull Street, a sister with a big old afro, throwing her leg up. And what is that sister doing? She's reading a book. And what about the little boy reaching for an apple, the little brown boy on the back of Theater Works reaching for an apple? Images. Why? I consciously push for images, and there's more, of course, but I pushed for images that would awaken people, that would representation was the theme I gave people, even though what do you mean by that? That people that live here feel something when they see the images you create. Those two girls that are over there on Park Street on the wall, the two sisters back to back. Come on now, inspiration, feeling the neighborhood. So those were some of the projects that we did. And you know what's interesting? My board chair, who happened to be a man of color, came up to me sideways one day and said, we're not a DEI arts organization. We're an arts organization. And this is a brown person talking to me like this. Really? Okay, I hear you. I didn't really know where I was, but I was in pre-MAGA land. And so as fast as I was working to help the organization grow and get really great impact, I was in MAGA land. So that brown man said to me, you need to diversify these murals you're putting up around the city. There's too many, And I had to say, in my mind, I'm like, Hartford is 2/3 Black and brown people. Why can't we be on the walls?
Yeah, let's go further than that. 80-something% of this town, this city, is Black and brown and of color.
Okay.
So
what's wrong with representation?
Yeah, I mean, so let's I don't want you to say too much. Let's suffice it to say you turned a stale, really quite unheard of organization. I mean, the Arts Council, every city has a version of one of these, right? But you don't hear about them having any kind of social, civic impact. But I'm gonna let's pause there. Let's take you back, because how you really got there is the innovation you were engaged in at the 224. Right? Right? That within a religious context. I mean,
absolutely.
Taking an organization that was really, doing great work, but it was very small. It was social service oriented, and it was kind of the traditional sort of basis. There was the
charity,
the annual feeding program, the weekly, something another, and to give to the thing. You have the fundraising dinner every year, and did good work, work with the senior citizen. I think they had a senior program, and you went from there, convinced your board, I don't know how you did it, to invest in buying getting the old, used to be the Symphony Building, used to be dance, Hartford's building, convinced them to buy that building, and then come up with a concept of the 224, which is the address 224 Farmington Street in the city of Hartford. And all of a sudden, what used to be considered kind of everyday fair, religious, do-gooder work, to this thriving center of life and art and culture, and with spirituality, not just Christianity, but spirituality looming large. Talk just a little bit about what that vision was as you cast it, and made it make some sense.
Well, the vision for the 224 eco space, which we could have never imagined it would have turned out to that, came out of my studies around faith-based community development at that time. because that was the rage in ministry for those of us that were converting out of traditional social services to start looking at faith-based community development. And it was a time period where it was the heyday of Floyd Flake, who, really renovated Queens, New York, which was crack alley, into like a beautiful, thriving neighborhood through faith-based community development with, affordable housing and private schools and clinics. And so it's about faith leaders using these skills to transform communities as well as their community of faith. And so I have an entrepreneurial pastor friend who I was talking to, and he said, if you want to change a city, you know what you need to do? If you are committed to changing the city, you need to buy it. You go buy one city block and you have an impact on it, you can change the city. 224 is a block. So Floyd Flake gave us the inspiration. We started out, the way we started the ability to get the 224 was we organized a bus trip. This is old school. Organized a bus trip of stakeholders from Hartford, put them on a bus, brought them to New York, had them see Allen Cathedral and Queens, New York, and all that had been developed, and convinced them that the same God that worked in Queens could work in Hartford. And then I soon became the director of the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships for the state of Connecticut and the city of Hartford, where I was tied to the Bush administration first, and then later on the Obama administration, doing faith-based community development, teaching nonprofit leaders or church leaders how to be nonprofit leaders. And as a matter of fact, my doctoral dissertation was called Galvanizing Faith and Neighborhood-Based Leaders to Address Poverty through the Faith Works Community Development Leadership Institute, where I got federal funding, $150,000 a year, to train some of us in how to be nonprofit leaders. And in the course of 2 years, I trained like 80 folk in nonprofit leadership, and many of them around the country now doing fabulous things because I opened their mind to the business of ministry with nonprofit. Because a lot of people have church, but they don't have some of the skills of the business skills of nonprofit. So they miss opportunity for more abundance to come in. So it's about helping them change their minds. And then the next part of changing your mind beyond faith-based community development is my next tier, which is social innovation. And social innovation is true entrepreneurship in faith-based, sometimes context, or in nonprofit context, where you take a nonprofit and you turn it into a business. Instead of just being a starving nonprofit, you find ways to raise money that are businesses, and you run the businesses to raise money for your nonprofit. And that's what the 224 EcoSpace is, a business that raised money to support the Conference of Churches. And so we came about getting it because we ended up getting state money. So it's because we had a lot of good connections that helped us advocate to get the building. As good church people, we walked around the building 7 times. We laid hands on it. And inside the building, we walked around it, cast out everything, anointed every corner and every doorknob, prayed, open windows, all that stuff. One of our staff of another hue was walking through the building one day, and he's like, how come all the doorknobs are oily? So we don't know.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. So, and one of those things, one of those innovative things you did was created an art gallery in the 224. So one whole area is you had gotten these artists to do these things. I mean, you could talk certainly more about them, but it was quite stunning because of the way the building had was cut up and the way that you all grew into the building and the vision for it. I thought this is, it's kind of part community center. It was the home of several different organizations. And when I say art, we're talking about dance,
Opera,
right,
theater.
meditation theater. All right. You led yoga. and
Mm-hmm.
other folk were doing that kind of spirituality stuff. So there was this cross blending of a number of things. And I don't mind telling you, I was like, this is funky wonky, right? I don't know how this gonna work in this kind of traditional reality here in Hartford. It was like, yeah, I was loving it every minute of it. I would do tours of the city, and I would say, one of my friends is doing this building. Let me tell you, let's run through here, and you had a community garden out on the
Mm-hmm.
back end of the spot. So there was lots going on. This idea of the artist space was key to me. Talk a little bit about how that informed that particular part of the work.
Well, really, the building was an art space. It had been renovated to be an art space in 1987. It just so happened that Sandy Cloud, who's still in Hartford, who was working with the Aetna Foundation, he was the person that took lead in developing that building into what was considered a state-of-the-art art space then in 1987. And all the major corporate sponsors of Hartford invested in the space. And so it now is one of those spaces with all kinds of arts people in it. It continues to have the ethos. So it's huge dance spaces, some of the best dance spaces in New England. Even people from New York are glad to be there. They're huge studios. And then one studio we turned into a yoga space, another one to a co-working space. There's a cafe, the community garden in the back. Hopefully there'll be a commercial kitchen soon. And it was an idea that a lot of people were like, ooh, this is wonky, wonky. What is she doing? How is this ministry? A lot of people said. How? I had a board. And how is this ministry? How is it not ministry? Okay. A lot of people don't understand it. Even some people would go up to Lydell and say, what's Doc up to these days with that stuff? And he's like, she's all right. She's all right. Like they afraid I'm not saved anymore, because she's doing yoga and meditation and all that stuff over there. What's she doing?
Right. Well, so in this kind of space, you were providing different ways to access spirit, right? Different ways for folk to get in, because sometimes we don't even know that that's what we're accessing. Listen, when you hear good music, you feel something, and we listen. We'll get all spiritual about it when it's gospel, so our hands go in there. Ooh, thank you, Jesus. But
or we go like this, and somehow you get that.
This is what I'm getting ready to say. When it's some Marvin Gaye, it make you feel another, or let me say, of a certain era, Marvin Gaye or Smokey Robinson, my mama Johnny Taylor, or Al Green. I mean, vintage Al Green. She would hear some of them songs, her hand go in the air. She said, "Woo!" And I knew just what that meant. I'm dating myself now. I'm dating myself. But back in the day, for us, you play a little Heat Wave.
It's on. But that's a feeling. It's a feeling.
Or a little Teddy Pendergrass.
See, my brother looked kind of like Teddy. I grew up with a Teddy in the house.
So that would set off the space,
right.
And so and that's spirit. That's spirit at work. So what I believe you were engaged in is taking, what's been traditionally bound and held in the four walls of a house of worship, whether that's Christian or Jewish or Islam in the mosque, whether that's Hindu in a temple or any of the other faith traditions. We have these houses of worship where God spirit is supposed to only be. What you said is no, the spirit of the Lord is everywhere.
What's deep is so many people, I mean, religious, non-religious, whatever you want to call it, as soon as they walk into the 224, they say, feel something here. And doesn't mean they're religious, but they feel, oh, it feels good here. Why?
Mhm.
It was intentional. I created a place that would intentionally make people feel a certain way using color psychology. It was designed to make people feel,
Mhm.
and they feel. But then because people are not used to feeling what they feel when they're in the environment, we often had a lot of people come through and go, "Oh, it's so clean."
Right,
Okay.
right, right,
Yes, it's clean.
right. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying with that, but I'm gonna try to take that the right way. But it could, you could also be saying something that I might need to check that. But I understand. I understand you was being really, we always
It's
try
so
to be
clean. It's so clean.
clean, clean. Yeah, okay. So I say all of that to say you've been thinking about this kind of stuff. This just didn't happen to you. You didn't just have a download. Now you did, but you've been on this road, right? You've been in this vein, on this journey, and much like any of us that's been a practitioner of sort. You don't quite know where you're headed. You know it's got to be that away, whatever
Right.
that away is.
That's all you know.
That's all, about all you got. It's much like what if we take the you and I the spiritual preacher route, you would say God told Abraham, go to a land I'll show you when you get there.
Right.
It's that away.
That happens
Leave.
too.
That's right. Leave you and Sarah, or as my people would call it, Sarah, before she was Sarah, and go that way. And you headed in that way. You end up creating something pretty fabulous along with your team at the 224. Then headed to the Arts Council, and then there was a something.
Well, there was a hiccup in the road. So, having been in ministry 30 years, Dean of Conference Studies, training all the ministers in New England in the Amy Zion Church, and being a trainer of ministers at Harvard Seminary for 18 years. So, very well developed in ministry, very obviously faithful, been at it a long time, not a newbie. Well, during the pandemic, saw a lot of things. Life opened my eyes in a lot of ways. And in the midst of that time period, because of all the deaths and the hatred that was in the air, I really started studying love then. Studying love. Like, I know we say that's what this thing is, love. We say it, but do we really study it? So I was really studying it. So I spent 2 years of deep study on love. Of course, I was doing Bible study to go online and putting it out there in the universe. And then I also enrolled in a mindfulness meditation teacher training. That was a 2-year program. That was Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield, who trained people to be meditation teachers. So I was already a certified yoga teacher. So then I would get a chance to be a meditation teacher too. And this is coming out of the pandemic. And that really prepared me for the mix of yoga, meditation, and the study of love, opened me up to love. And I realized my flaws. I realized that my idea of love was very transactional. And I realized I was very disloyal in love. And I had to change. Because if love is it, I wasn't doing it well. And the text that really opened me up was the one that says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, most people, when they hear that, they go, yeah, you should love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. You should love God like that. All your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength. That's how you should love God. Absolutely, because God is love. And if you're going to love God, You got to love God right. That's what folk will say, right? Heart, mind, soul. So if you're going to love God, you got to love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength. But then the next thing you would say to them is, so that means you should love yourself that way too, right?
Be careful now, preacher. Be careful.
Then they go, love yourself with all your heart. Love yourself with all your mind. Love yourself with all your soul. Love yourself with all your strength. That's loving yourself like that. Most people are going to say, nah, we're not supposed to love ourselves like that. We're supposed to love God like that, but not love ourselves like that. See, that's where we're wrong. Because love is all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. Love is being. You got to be love. Love is being. You just got to stay straight, narrow in love. And what love is like the, what do they call those things? You know, when they build things, they hang that thing up in the air so it's straight. What do they call them things?
And the ding-a-ling-a-lings.
It's so
The
they
wind
have
chime.
straight measurement.
Oh, plumb line.
Plumb line, yes.
Plumb line. Oh,
So
yes.
plumb line lets you know what's straight. Sometimes stuff got to be straight. And if you don't start out straight, everything gonna be twisted. So, see, you gotta have a plumb line in life. And the plumb line of life, I think, is love. Ooh.
I hear you, sis. I hear you.
So if you can't be in love like that, and what that kind of love is being, meaning you got to keep your stuff together. You can't be just going off on folk, and you got to act right all the time. You got to kind of control your little space that you occupy. Don't just be flying off the handle, going off on people. You got to just kind of keep it together. That's what love is. If you're loving yourself with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, your strength, you got to control yourself. You just can't be flying off the handle out of control. You got to love yourself. So then the third part is loving your neighbor with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. Well, then people go, well, who's my neighbor? Whoever's there. Whoever. Well, this discovery of whoever for me was like love is being all the time. Whoever is there is love. So as a pastor, I'm called to love whoever. And so there was a whoever at my church that happened to be a member of the church in transition already. They came back to church once they knew there was a new pastor, but they were raised in that church. Beautiful hair, beautiful accessories, my kind of people, because, you know, got a little sparkle. So cool. Well, if you're a new member or returning member of the church, of a main family of that church, and I'm the pastor, isn't my role to be love and journey with you wherever you are? Plumb line, be love, journey with you wherever you are. I'm straight. I know my relationship with God, but I'm called to be with you and have sort of a straight allegiance to love. Stay in love. Whoever you, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm called to love you with all my heart, all my mind, all my soul, my strength. So if your member's transitioning, you're going to love your member in transition, aren't you? And then as a pastor, because you learn all sorts of things as pastor, you stay pastor because you learn a lot of things about life. You know, some of the stories I've heard over time about humanity. So this is a humanity story, from hormones to shaving to thinking different. Like, we had a meeting at the church. It was a dress down Saturday, and they came just like stunningly gorgeous and totally accessorized. And everybody was like, this is dress down Saturday. Oh, I never dress down. That was deeper than I realized. They can't dress down and be.
who they were, because you would see who they used to be dressed
Mm-hmm.
down.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So, needless to say, we came back to church. They were strong, faithful, growing young adult, attracting other young adults, and I made them a leader. My denomination went crazy because I allowed this person to be a leader.
Yeah.
And the members of the church voted for them to be the chairperson of the committee. And so I was fired for that from the church
Yeah.
after 30 years because I allowed a member to be a leader, and I didn't tell the district. I don't tell the district about my other member stuff. Oh, yeah, he's the treasurer, but he's also an alcoholic, but I'm working with him.
Yeah, because God ain't through with them yet. God ain't through with them yet, right? We would say that, please be patient with me. Be patient, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
then 6 months later, it happened at the Arts Council, but this emerged, this creative disruption of life.
so that gets us to why that's why I wanted to talk to you about. You have just dropped a new book along with workbook and a whole launching a whole campaign. I'm gonna throw this in here. You're
Yay!
calling it creative disruption.
Yes.
And what one of the things I can talk to you about, could talk to those of you who are seeing this, watching this, and will watch this. That's why I wanted to spend just a little bit of time over the arc of your journey over the last 20 years or so, 20 year plus actually, was that this didn't just drop out of the air. Wow, you got a download, and that's what happens in my experience when divine gets you with something. You get a little bit of a boom, a download. But what I've also resonate with this creative disruption. I have had occasion for you to call me and say, listen, I'm not gonna be out there on the line like you, but what can I do from where I'm at? Right. And we've had more than one conversations over the time we've been related to one another. Talk to us a little bit about, you have some core ideas, you call them pillars, to what creative disruption is. Kind of talk to us in brief about what those are and what you're trying to get at when you say creative disruption.
And let me just start with there, because creative disruption was the phrase that dropped in my spirit, and I was realizing that art has a way of shocking you, disrupting the flow of your everyday life. And so that's what I realized at the Arts Council. And I heard that we're using art to be creatively disruptive, and it can have an impact in a community. So I started to see that art is really a medicine for community, and that's what creative disruption is all about. So I opened the book by talking about the Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz, and how that's a huge creative disruption that brings over $3 million to Hartford from one weekend. So some people might think it's just folks having jazz, but it's a creative disruption because it's economic empowerment. It brings artists to a space, and it's something that builds community. It creates a space like that. So my model of creative disruption is to create them all around the world as little pods and public art spaces that bring people together, because we're living in a time where people don't come together that much anymore. They may not be going to church, but they might go to a coffee house, and that might be church. Or they might be willing to go to a jazz festival, which is church. Or they might be willing to go to the symphony, which is church. And so I want people to still have uplifting experiences, and I call that creative disruption as well. But then the other thread of creative disruption is the reality that as I was studying those public space creative disruptions, like how Little Amal came to Hartford, the puppet Amal, and she crossed over Main Street. That's public art. But then creative disruption is also, as you study art, you start to change yourself. And as you experience the art of other groups or other experiences or venture down different paths of art, it opens you in expected ways or unexpected ways. It depends on how open you want to be. And so during the course of my writing the book, thinking I'm talking about the toolkit of creative disruption, meaning that public art, I started to really study creative disrupting artists who are doing phenomenal work of opening people's minds and their spirits. And so as I thought about creatively disruptive artists like Ava DuVernay, they're change makers. Oprah, a change maker. Lin-Manuel, a change maker, a creative disruptor. I realized also that I was being creatively disrupted. I didn't think that was going to happen to me. But that study of love and then the study of arts and being open to loving all kinds of people opened to me to creative disruption. And I realized, you know what, this world can actually apply creative disruption, and it can end up being something that is a gift to the world. It's an action, it's not by accident. And so we need to use artists as innovators and change makers, especially as we're going into these times, because we're going to have to heal the world. So, in a nutshell, that's creative disruption.
Yeah, and so from this is so faith filled for me as I think about it. We think about, for example, the story of Pentecost, right? Here were a number of people in an upper room, and then there was a sound, art, music came in, sounded like rushing, the rushing of mighty wind, and it filled the room where they were in. To the point, then they began to communicate in languages that didn't necessarily, those people didn't necessarily learn or were not necessarily trained in these languages. But here were, during this festival, this Jewish festival, y'all don't mind me if I preach a little bit, this Jewish festival of and a minor one at that. It wasn't no major one, a minor one. But that there were a number of people from all over the religious world known in that biblical time and region. But all of a sudden, they were then talking to each other and communicating with each other. And I see it very much. And it wasn't now not just in the upper room, but it had poured out into the community. So such that people began to comment, are they drinking that new wine? Did that new Whipple come out? I'm of a certain, I know now it's all the other kinds of things. Crystal. Am I saying it right? I don't know. I don't drink. But anyway, y'all who know, y'all know. But then one stepped out from among them and then started to quote some Bible. This is that was spoken of by the prophet Joel. So I feel very much like, if you would allow, that you're being, thinking you are on assignment, on one kind of assignment. But here now, God has gifted you. I'll say that God has gifted you with a new assignment, or an additional assignment, right? That you thought you had left, quite frankly, and that they had dismissed you, but now you are called as a prophet, an apostle, maybe, to talk about how we use the art, our own personal giftings, but not only our own personal giftings, but how we use these gifts that have been given, the sound, the look, the touch, the smell, the color, the feel, right? All of those are then accessible to us, that we think traditionally they are supposed to be dealt with within a particular setting. You're saying, no, let's hit the marketplace. Let's hit the marketplace.
World.
Let's get out here.
And
right?
see, I've been trained as a Methodist. The world is my pulpit. I believe the world is my pulpit, wherever I am, holy ground. I want to create spiritual experiences wherever I am. And so by using the tools of the arts, you're doing that. And then, see, God gave me the assignment, and it was a word in my spirit: creative disruption. It was creative disruptor, creative disruption. And when God gives me an assignment, every preacher knows you got the title, the message, you got to work on this: creative disruption, creative disruption, creative disruption. You ain't going to have no rest till you work on it. You know you got to work on it. Writers, preachers know. So I got the assignment, and then my life blew up. And so I had already written the book, the first draft. The first draft of the book that I wrote was when I was working there, and I didn't quite know what God was revealing. But then my life creatively disrupted. And I had a chance for the first time to see my life without the shell of somebody else's interpretation. Because for 35 years, my whole my adult life, I have been a minister of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. And so always in my head was, I got to represent the church. I got to stay within the lines. I got to do what the company says. I got to be a company woman. You know, if you're a part of these organizations, there is a part of you that is trained to stay in the lines. And I started to be a trainer of the lines, even though I'm a colorful person that you would think would be staying in lines. And so for 30 years, I was trained to think like Zion, and then to be a nonprofit leader, think like the company, think like you got to raise this money, think like the outcomes. Well, the thing that happened to me working at the Arts Council too was it wasn't a good fit for me because the thing almost killed me. It almost killed me. It was not for me. You don't have to live like that. And so I think creative disruption was for me to wake up and realize, you know what? There's a way for you to live and be fully yourself without giving yourself away so much. And how many people live most of their life faking it to survive? They fake it on the job. They may not like the job. They may not like the people they work with. They may not like their trade, but they fake it because they need the check. And they might even go home and not like their spouse, but they don't want to fight. So they don't like them. Might not even like their kids. Might not even like their neighborhood. But they just have a life of just, this is what it is. I don't like it. But I want to like my life. I believe we
Well,
could like and love our life.
and here's the real deal. Once the assignment is given, right? When the student is ready, somebody said the teacher
Teacher
comes,
appears. It's true.
right? So in many ways, when it is time, right? The message, the title is given, and any of us who are creators, there are multiple paths to creation, right? I'm a songwriter. I'm a musician, and my first love and my first art is music, right? And songwriting in particular, and then been in music production and lived a whole career and a whole life of that, while also becoming into ministry, in a more traditional sense. And often I would get a word or two and a phrase. And then, just as you said, it won't let you go.
Mm-mm.
It won't let
Mm-mm.
and I'm thinking on a song I did, after the night, and that's all I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I messed around, was working on a project for a sister friend of mine, um, and it came to me, finish the song. And I finished the song in that production, those production sessions, and we ended up singing a duet, myself and the sister that I wrote the song for, and it was her little hit on her little record back in the day.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and and um, and I'm reflecting now today on that process. The song didn't really come until I was ready for them to give the message, and the messenger was ready to deliver the message. Boy, I'm talking good. I'm talking real good. So here you are. You've had a tremendous trajectory, and now creative disruption has now come. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
in the last few minutes we got tonight, talk about what you hope to accomplish now. Now it's being birthed. It's being delivered to the world. And let me also say, I don't think anything happens by happenstance. I think there is a God directed moment, God moments all throughout this that got you here. And I also know that when something like this is it's birthed, it happens within the context of community. So there's you there's the piece of this that is bound by the relationships we have with one another in the context of community. But talk about, where do we go from here? What, now that creative disruption has come, and so you have a book, you have
And I'll
workshops.
be touring, and I have,
Mhm.
you'll find Creative Disruption. Our community is the Grove. It's called the Grove, and you can find the Grove on School, SKOOL, as a platform. So it's a place for creatives all around the world to gather, artists and activists, change makers, or people that are on the way of becoming. I say, I call it the creative way of becoming, because one thing we didn't talk about was imagination. And that's at the root of this. It's the spark. And to have imagination means you can always create. And if you can always create, you can always change your life. And when my life blew up, just like the phoenix, I might have gone down, it might have been ashes, but I came back with a new life. And so I recognize the newness of that life that I have. That's also part of creative disruption in that season of change. So I'm going to be building communities all around the world, hubs, I'm calling them. And I think, in essence, as I was talking to God about this, they're calling gatherings at the Grove. So there'll be groves all around the world, cities around the world. When I go there, it's a gathering at the Grove. And I realized, oh, it sounds like church without saying church. And I'm training people to
Mhm.
be leaders without making them ministers.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
think the terms are so loaded. I'm just letting it go and seeing if I can just have the essence of the good.
Right. Right, right. Well, I am pleased to be partnering with you. We're on this journey together. I think it is fantastic what happens when you sometimes you come kicking and screaming, right? And you may be one of them ones because you just gotta, you know. I think at
I
other
thought I was
times.
all right. I thought it was enough. I thought I had done enough. Ain't I okay, God? Don't you think you okay by now? I'm okay. Aren't I okay?
Just when you think, then there is the I'm fascinated by artists, and the artists that I know and that I've had the privilege to journey with um, closely. One of my big brothers and mentors in the work, his name is James Mtume, and he transitioned into the ancestors, the realm of the ancestors, a couple of years back here. And one of the things he talked often about, and he helped me to lean into, is he'd create a thing. So you may know James Mtume. Early on, he was a jazz musician
Mm.
and toured for 5 years with Miles Davis,
Mm-hmm.
doing
Mm-hmm.
Miles's experimental music learning, music experimental stuff. And then he transitioned. He became a part of the backup group and music production group of Roberta Flack. And then on the side, he and one of his music writing partners started a production company, and he produced songs with Stephanie Mills, "What You Gonna Do in My Loving," Phyllis Hyman, and there's a whole list of folk. On the side, he was working with his own band. All right. And then 19, I think stuff really, I mean, he got nominated for a Grammy, won a Grammy with Stephanie Mills, and Two Hearts Are Always Better back in the late 70s. You remember that? Yeah. And The Closer I Get to You, Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. That's his composition. So these are hits, right? These are hits. Hit making machine, and then he shifted around so young people know Biggie's Juicy. But in the 1980s, Juicy Fruit was the jam, known to us by just the beginning of it was a drum beat, right? And changed music, one of the most sampled songs in pop music, hip hop in particular. Anyway, he said to me, you create a thing, and then he called it this way, and then you crash and burn it. He said, you don't do that again. You create something new. Right? I was like, he could have made another Juicy and made some more money. But anyway, but his idea was, what flowed for him was creating, casting it out, and it's kind of biblical. Cast your bread up on the water, and in many days, okay, it's something like that. And then he creates something new, and then he do something new. Then he went from he did the soundtrack to Native Son, which was the movie of the book, and then he was for the years of the run of New York Undercover, the TV show. He was the music supervisor. So all the music he did.
But it's because he can continue to have that spark of imagination.
This is what I'm talking about.
To manifest, to create.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's, for me, ministry is the gift of imagination. Spirit drops it in. Okay, you got to figure out how to make it happen. Right. I'll churn. Right. Okay, Lord, what I have to do? I'll ask 50 questions. I'll get it to 50 people. I'll read stuff. Now AI can research it. There's a way to find out, and then you make it happen.
Listen,
that's how you create.
Listen, you got
imagination to create.
You got some principles in this book, so I'm encouraging everybody. First, let me pop it back in again. Creative disruption. Where can you find the book?
Amazon and Books By, because some of my friends don't want to use Amazon, so there's Books By. So right. Creative disruption, and you can find my website or just look me up, Reverend Dr. Shelley Best, and you'll see all my links.
All right.
I'll be on TikTok.
It should be on TikTok.
Creative disruption on TikTok.
She be TikToking. I'm gonna tell you right now. She be dancing, doing all kinds of stuff. Listen. We are in these times, and in these current times, I believe the Spirit is calling for us to access our own creative disruptions. Where are these, if you can allow me to say it my way, these moments at which God says, okay, in a kind of arresting, you gotta shift.
You need to sit down.
You gotta go. You gotta do something different. You gotta maybe go another direction.
Right.
And yet going another direction is actually the same direction, just in a different way. Right. And I find, like I said, there's an essence of this trajectory that I can date back to when we first met over 20 years ago. And yet here you are now moving in this particular kind of way. Listen, we're going to have you back some more.
Yeah, I'll be back.
We're going to talk more about what God is doing, what creative disruptions are occurring, picking up all over the place. Stay tuned here in the greater Hartford region and in the state, because there's going to be some collabs happening and all over the place. All right. Dr. Best, thank you so very much.
Thank you
for being with us and sharing. I believe we are in this current moment, as Mordecai told his cousin, You're in the king's house for such a time as this. And I think this is where we are, is where God would have us be. And
Ooh.
I'd say to you, God bless you in your every endeavor, as we do what we can to creative disrupt all over the place.
All
Creative
right.
disrupt
Let's make
all
it
over the place.
happen.
All right. See y'all next
Thank
time.
you.
Peace. Thank you, Dr. Best. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
real soon, y'all. Peace.